The writers of this movie must have watched one episode of the original series and went, yeah, that's enough research, we've got this. No, you don't got this. Hello! For anyone new who may have stumbled upon this video, welcome, and for returning viewers of this channel, you might notice that this video is a little different from my other ones. That's because this is just a little passion project I wanted to work on in my free time. In April of this year, the trailer for this movie in particular caught my attention, and since then, I've taken it upon myself to absorb every bit of Chip 'n Dale media that I possibly can, starting with what is their most notorious and best adaptation, Rescue Rangers. Their 1989 series was enough to open a hole in my head big enough for these two chipmunks to fit themselves into in order to take over my brain. I've been living in a constant state of brain rot for the past few months. And with that brain rot came a newfound opinion of this movie that I enjoyed upon its first release. Don't get me wrong, I still love this movie to bits, but an obsession with the movie source is bound to give me a chance to view the movie from a more educated perspective. Disclaimer, I am not a professional movie reviewer, so don't expect me to get too deep into the writing or pacing of the movie. I'm not here to go over any of that stuff. I'm here to get really petty about the nitty-gritty of the Rescue Rangers brand. Does this movie deserve to call itself a comeback, or is it just a money-grabbing, nostalgia-baiting reboot? Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers 1989 is an American animated TV series created by Tad Stones and Alan Zaslov in the 1980s. The series follows Disney's popular mischief-creating chipmunk duo, Chip and Dale, and shows them in a whole new light. Chip, still remaining the smarter half of the duo, now leads a group of crime-fighting rodents known as the Rescue Rangers. Dale works alongside Chip as usual, continuing his role as the more dull but fun-loving and easygoing half of the duo. Joining them are inventor Gadget Hackwrench, Aussie muscleman Monterey Jack, and Zipper the Fly. It ran for 3 seasons on the Disney afternoon throughout 1989 and 1990, ending at 65 episodes. Seemingly, a movie special for the series was considered in 1990, but discarded as DuckTales: The Treasure of the Lost Lamp hadn't been well received. Nowadays, the series serves as a nostalgic reminder of the good old days for adults all around the world, which poses the question: was this nostalgic longing taken advantage of during the creation of the 2022 film? Wikipedia describes Rescue Rangers 2022 as a continuation of the animated TV series, but for the sake of my own sanity, I'd like to make it loud and clear that these two adaptations exist separately from one another in my own view. The film, however, does depend entirely on the 1989 TV series' existence for its plot to work, so for the sake of that, let's take Wikipedia's statement with a grain of salt and carry it with us on this adventure. Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers 2022 is an American live-action / computer-animated action / adventure / comedy film loosely based on the Rescue Rangers adaptations of the popular Disney duo Chip 'n Dale. It was directed by Akiva Schaffer and written by Dan Greger and Doug Mand, after going through previous director and being thrown around a bit with a loose plot in mind at the time. As the final story goes, it follows Chip and Dale respectively after the events of Rescue Rangers' cancellation and the pair's separation over a short argument. Chip goes on to become a full-time insurance salesman, his only companion being his dog Millie. Dale, however, continues attempting to bathe in the spotlight, attending many fan expos and maintaining a social media presence based entirely on the cancelled show. The pair reunite after a cry for help from their old co-star Monterey Jack, who owes money to an infamous criminal gang called the Valley Gang, and is later kidnapped by them. Chip and Dale team up to get Monty back, butting heads with the leader of the Valley Gang, Sweet Pete, at every turn. Sweet Pete is a washed-up version of Peter Pan for some reason.
Peter Pan? Yup, star of stage and screen, but you can call me Sweet Pete.
And is making bootleg movies with the tunes he kidnaps, Monty included. There's also a bad cop, a good cop, numerous crime organizations left uninvestigated, and Gadget and Zipper in there for like 2 minutes. So, what does all this have to do with Chip 'n Dale? Well, if you're thinking, nothing really, then you're right. The first time I watched this movie, I was Rescue Rangers free. No formal knowledge, no analysing the characters in my spare time, nothing. And after the movie, still Rescue Rangers free. All I learned about it from watching the movie is that it was a TV series at some point. Isn't this movie meant to be a self-proclaimed comeback? A love letter to the original series and a nostalgic trip for adults who grew up watching it. A movie about Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers. This movie is meant to be a standalone adventure that anybody can go into without prior knowledge to understand anything, and for that aspect, they did a great job. But for the fans who are excited to see their favourite Disney Afternoons characters in their element again, it's a little bit of a letdown. With that being said, they didn't go the whole movie without a little bit of fan service. During the beginning sequence of the movie, numerous clips from the show and the original theme song were on display for all the nostalgia-hungry fans to enjoy. Even Thomas Chippendale, the cabinet maker from the 18th century where Chip and Dale originally got their names from, was mentioned.
Thomas Chippendale, the London-based cabinet maker from the 1700s. Sick cabinet, Thomas!
Screenshots taken directly from the show were also on display at Dale's stall at the Fan Expo, although some appear to have had some Photoshop work done to them. The theme song is remixed into the score when Chip, Dale and Ellie bust into Sweet Pete's bootlegging facility, and the title font for The Case of the Missing Monty is a direct replica of the title cards from the original series. Villains from the series are also shown as cameos in multiple shots. Professor Nimnall on display in the set at the beginning of the movie, outside of Chip and Dale's trailer with Fat Cat, and in the end credits. Fat Cat's henchmen, Meps and Wart, are also in the background of Main Street, though it appears that none of them were invited to the after-filming toast that opens the movie, which is upsetting for them. Some other smaller callbacks include multiple outfits from episodes in the trailer, Dale's dress from Adventures in Squirrel Sitting, his leprechaun outfit from The Last Leprechaun, and his stage outfit from A Case of Stage Blight. Chip running into the Indiana Jones cosplay stall as a reference to his original Rescue Rangers outfit is another wardrobe callback. The occasional classic chipmunk run, Monty's Chipper nickname making a comeback.
I'm sorry, Chipper. I just love it so much.
The Ranger plane coming in clutch towards the ends of the movie, and even a photo of a mouse that looks awfully like an obscure character from the comics, known as Glitch, in Monty's apartment are amongst the references to the original series. Not to mention the entire merchandise shed that Dale owns. Don't mind me just trying to find a way to convince the set designers to let me purchase every item in this shed. Housing things like old VHS sets, lunchboxes, plushes, and even the old Rescue Rangers video games. And oh, you thought I was done? I haven't even revealed the writer's favourite episode of the old series yet. Season 2 episode 32's Double O Chipmunk makes two significant impacts on the plot of the movie. Dale working on his own private spin-off named Double O Dale, similar to his spy counterpart in the 1990 episode.
I'm Double O Dale, super spy!
Is the reason that Chip and Dale argue and separate. Later, Dale makes a callback to the rat disguise that Chip wears in the same episode, and uses it in their plan to infiltrate Sweet Pete's base. A perfect way to make a callback to the original series and have it work in the new movie. Really wish they had done more of this. A lot of people were upset and shocked by the sudden voice change of the characters upon the voice cast and trailer reveals, myself included. Though I do believe they chose John Mulaney and Andy Samberg well as Chip and Dale respectively, it felt uncanny watching animated chipmunks talk in a normal voice, and I'm sure I'm not the only person who felt that way. But don't fret. Despite them up and replacing Chip and Dale's iconic high-pitched voices for this movie, the original cast of the 1989 TV series makes a comeback in numerous ways. Tress MacNeille, known for playing Chip and Gadget, returns for her original roles. During the high-pitched gags, Chip's original voice comes into play.
I love it.
And for Gadget's ungodly low amount of screen time, Tress is playing the iconic character once more. Dale's and Zipper's original voice, Corey Burton, also returns to play Pitch Dale and all of Zipper's original squeaks.
What if I did something like...
I am into nuts!
Jim Cummings is unfortunately replaced as Monty by Eric Bana, an actual Australian. Thanks for the representation, but I mean, come on. Jim's Monty voice was perfect. He does, however, get to replay everybody's favourite cat crime boss Fat Cat, as well as numerous of his iconic roles such as Pooh, Tigger and Pete. They even got one of the show's original creators, Tad Stones, to voice in the movie, as a Hollywood Asian who offers Chip and Dale their own show, which would go on to be Rescue Rangers, a fitting role for him to voice. While we're in a good mood talking about all the things this movie did to honour its older counterpart, why not bring up some aspects of the movie that I did enjoy as a 1989 Rescue Rangers fan? There is a large emphasis in the movie on the role that Chip and Dale play in each other's lives. The origin story that the writers made up for them in itself, while extremely random and oddly placed, displays this perfectly. Chip has always been the smart planner of the duo, and Dale is always the impulsive execution of the plan. Young Dale makes a seemingly random and absurd joke out of nowhere, baffling not only his classmates but the audience too, and young Chip criticizes him later for saying that he just didn't set it up right. Dale's narration supports this by endearingly claiming that Chip is always so thoughtful about everything. The emphasis on the setup and execution within the pair is clear during the rapping scene, when Chip and Dale have to get Sweet Pete's step tracker from within his locker. I missed it the first time, but coming back to the movie after a long phase of 1989 binging, it stood out to me like a sore thumb. While Dale is busy rapping, Chip uses a match to reveal the code to Sweet Pete's locker. Chip uses his quick thinking to solve the case, while Dale uses his impulsive goofing to help the situation. It's Rescue Rangers 101. It feels so authentic, and the attention to detail considered for their characters is so perfect in this way. This scene alone is sure to cure any Rescue Ranger 1989 fan's longing heart, if you can get past how god-awful the rapping is, even though it is somehow kind of catchy. The occupations that both chipmunks get into once their duo days are over reflect this part of their personality as well. Both still long for social connection in the way that they had it together, but in their own separate ways. Chip is all about convincing people and making them think within his direction, while Dale's still aiming to be an entertainer. There's also a small visual nod to the Rescue Rangers logo within Chip and Dale's colour coding that I loved the addition of. Throughout the movie, Dale is seen wearing red clothing or accessories, and Chip is typically dressed in blue, just like the two corresponding colours on the logo.
Editing tweak here, I also forgot to mention the fact that when Dale puts on the suit after telling Chip about 00 Dale, it's a blue suit, which is insinuating that he wants to become more like Chip. So there is a very purposeful red and blue colour coding there.
Chip and Dale are one of those animated duos that you just can't misplace from one another. It's never Chip or Dale, it's always Chip and Dale, and it's nice seeing this represented in various ways throughout the movie. Other things I enjoyed are the addition of Millie in the absence of Dale, showing that Chip still wants to feel responsible for something in the same way he admits to feeling responsible for Dale in the end of the movie. Dale having blue eyes, Gadget and Zipper being the endgame couple.
They're great. 42 kids and counting.
It's funny, and they knew it would be. The often overlooked heavy metal playing in Chip's AirPods as he calmly strolls through his neighborhood. And Chip being the first character under the Walt Disney umbrella to curse with his iconic line,
"And I'm in hell."
As much as I can talk about how I adore the finer details of the movie, it has a lot of overarching problems that generally counter some of the good points that the film has to offer. The list of Rescue Rangers 1989 callbacks is not even half the size of the list of references from all sorts of media. I think it's clear to anybody watching the movie that they focus more on creating a giant crossover movie than an ode to Rescue Rangers as a series. A plain example being the nickname that Dale calls Chip throughout the movie. Instead of Dale calling Chip by his famous nickname Chipper, he calls him Chippy, which is evidently a reference to Noddy Goes to Toyland, prioritizing referencing unrelated media over referencing a classic recurring moment from the series. Not only does it prioritize unrelated references, this movie also has no shame in lying about the series nor fact-checking in its entirety. The list of lies and mistakes is just about the same size as the list of references. We begin with a flashback to 1982, where Chip and Dale would have been around 8 to 9 years old as they were in 3rd grade. The movie claims that they graduated before getting picked up for Rescue Rangers, which had its first episode released as a preview in 1988, meaning that at the time of filming and graduating, Chip and Dale would have been 15 or 16 years old. An introduction into the segue of Rescue Rangers and the real world where they are filming the show introduces a fake episode named Fat Cat Attack, though this purely would have been invented to make the segue into the movie easier. Monty wears Rescue Rangers cologne, and this becomes a way for Chip and Dale to grow suspicious of Ellie later in the movie. This is a fake merchandising item and was never even considered as merchandise. During the Rescue Rangers shed scene, which is a very important scene for the history and legacy of the show, multiple lies are on display and verbally stated. Each episode with its own box set is listed wrong, with episode numbers and seasons incorrectly written. Dale also claims that Rescue Rangers' peak was in 1991, the year after the show was cancelled.
You're messing with me again. It actually shows Rescue Rangers ratings in every US market in 1991, which, as you may recall, was our most successful year.
Ellie being a fan of the show despite growing up in Albany becomes another plot point about making Ellie suspicious that's built upon a lie, as Rescue Rangers did actually air in Albany. The shed itself is also littered with classic Chip and Dale merchandise, completely separate from the show, insinuating that other adaptations of the pair do exist, which doesn't line up with the film's canon. Though this very well could have been purely to fill the space in the scene, it's worth noting. I did say I would be getting petty. They also make up more episodes later in the movie. Mission Impossible being the 121st episode of the series is completely fictional, and the characters even go as far as to claim that there was a 325th episode of the series. This could have very easily been explained that the show went on further than its real 65 episodes counterpart within the movie's universe. Or maybe they should have just gone back and made 325 episodes of the series in 1990. This last one is a clear mistake and not an intentional lie, but I'm still confused on how they could miss it. In the last scene of the movie, when all of the Rangers are back together again, Gadget is missing her goggles. I mean, come on, she had them in the first scene. Is there a reason she doesn't have them now? Did they just not notice? I said it at the beginning of this video and I'll say it again. I've never reviewed or broken down a movie start to finish in my lifetime. I am in no way qualified to complain about the quality of a movie, but there are some things in this movie that stuck out to me as a fan of the original series, and I want to take a quick minute to bring these to light. The entire movie is based around the idea that Rescue Rangers is a TV show and these characters are actors, and yet Monty's cheese obsession within the show was translated to the actor without any prior explanation of it being something they had to include in the show. Luckily, Gadget's got my back in this, outright admitting that her character in the movie is the same as the one in the show.
This thing actually flies! And you know how to fly it!
Yeah, I guess my character from the old show and my character in real life are basically exactly the same.
Seems the writers were self-aware on this mistake, though it could have been avoided if they just focused more on the Rescue Rangers as a whole, like the title implies, than just Chip and Dale. Gadget and Zipper didn't even have any plot relevance until 1 hour into the movie, and other than that, they were mentioned about twice by name. All they did was provide transport for Dale, when he could have very easily just caught a taxi or any other means of transport. I mean, he had to go all the way to their house. He could have used that time getting to Chip and Ellie quicker, surely? And even then, we don't even see the Rescue Rangers together until the last minute. The movie would have been so much more exciting, original, and nostalgic if we had more group dynamic and less one-dimensional side characters. I said I wouldn't go into pacing, but I have to bring up the pacing from them introducing Monty to him being kidnapped. It's too fast, it's like one scene apart, especially considering they hung Monty over our heads like a piece of cheese. Hey look, here's this character from the original series you loved, whoops, he's gone and you won't see him until the last minute of the movie. Sorry. And don't get me started on you. I'll get to that later. This section is completely optional, I just need someone to vent. Anyone who knows me knows, I do not like CGI Dale.
Wow, thank you. And thank you again for watching the show. It really means a lot.
You are gross.
I get it. The point of the movie is that the TV show is just them playing characters. But when you're playing a character that's sweeter, funnier, more understanding, and generally more likable than you, wouldn't you, I don't know, feel bad? Dale's personality has been completely ruined. I can't be the only person who would have gone into this movie thinking, oh, I get to see my favourite characters again. The only character who is still, well, in character is Chip. I didn't sign up to watch my favourite characters from the 90s turn into different people. I didn't watch this movie thinking Dale would become a self-obsessed jerk. And yeah, I have no reason to hold back. Do I find it easier to hate him because he's ugly? Yes. Would I have excused most of his actions if he stayed in the style that he started the movie in? Yes. With that being said, let's point at CGI Dale's most prominent flaw. He is an attention hog. His introduction to the movie is him recounting the story of how he met Chip and how Rescue Rangers was formed. How sweet. It's then revealed that he's on an Instagram live, recounting the story to his followers. Okay, Then, it's misleading to the audience and his followers that Dale's the one who's about to be announced onto the stage, and he ends the live just in time for them not to find out that he is in fact not going on stage. The second he meets up with Chip, all he can talk about is himself and rescue rangers. When they're talking to the police about their friend who had just been kidnapped, Dale insists that Officer Putty must have seen the show that he was on. When they're about to be escorted out of Johnson's basement, he reveals that they're actors. Seriously, can this guy stop talking about the show for one damn second? Don't look at me. When they track down where Monty would be hidden and plan to get him back, Dale claims that they'll be heroes before anything else. When Chip and Dale are in the literal police station after finding out that they were too late to save Monty, Dale immediately goes on Instagram Live again. But this time, Sweet Pete uses it to track them down. Yes, finally! Floor comeuppance, karma, and it's deserved! You think that all of this will be endearing to hear from Dale of all people, right? Dale, who misses his best friend, misses their peak years in Rescue Rangers. And then you see his face. This is a big topic within the conversation surrounding this movie, the various art style choices. There are some wonderful animation cameos within this movie, such as an animator on Who Framed Roger Rabbit returning to animate the iconic character once again. The same studio that animated My Little Pony animated them in their short sequence, and etc. But the big, age-old question that has been asked since the day the teasers came out. Why is Chip 3D? According to an article on Befores and Afters, the simple answer to this was to save time and money. They needed to get this movie out on a strict budget and time limit, and fair enough. But if you're marketing this movie on an old 2D animated series, claiming that it's a comeback for those characters, and making a big deal about one of the main characters being 3D, it just sort of breaks the immersion for a lot of people. Don't get me wrong, what they did with Chip's animation was wonderful, and I adored the expressions he made. But when you're claiming that Who Framed Roger Rabbit was inspiration for the art direction of the movie, it would have been nicer to see more of an impact of that inspiration amongst the main characters. Simple things like the characters switching from their 2D film counterparts during the Fat Cat attack segment straight to their 3D models when the camera turns off, while Fat Cat seemingly stays 2D, makes it so much easier to disassociate this movie to the series. The 2D animated characters like Chip and Dale's teacher, Tigra, and numerous characters in the crowd were outstanding. Imagine the praise this movie would have received if it had been given more resources to work with for the main cast. The animation on the Fat Cat attack segment alone was incredible, so reminiscent of the original series but smoother and easier to follow. There are some scenes that really do show the animators breaking a sweat and giving it their all with what they've got, plain example being the scene where Chip gets to Monty's apartment and discovers Monty's hidden cheese. The bounciness of the characters, the smoothness of Chip's movement when he throws the cheese. It's all so well done, but it just doesn't hit the same way that it would have with 2D animation. That being said, the animators did a splendid job with what they were given, and I think that the people claiming this movie is a hate letter to animation are over-exaggerating. They might have needed to cut some plans short, but there's still a huge variety of animation mediums to be appreciated within the entire film. Also, Dale is still mad ugly. I'm sorry. I don't know what it is that makes the CGI so unappealing. If somebody could tell me what's so off about it, that would help so much. They really did a great job at translating his 2D design into 3D CGI, but maybe that's just it. Maybe we should be staying away from doing that. Disney's art is so stylized and unique that taking it out of its prime medium and copy-pasting it into photorealistic textures doesn't work as well as it sounds in theory. It's like taking a photo of an actual chipmunk and enlarging all of its facial features. At least this movie's CGI made me find Alvin and the Chipmunk's CGI 10 times more endearing. Look at how little and rodent-like they are. This movie left me with so many absurd questions, so I just needed a place to throw them in so that maybe I could get an answer out of somebody. How does Dale know so much about illegal trade? Why was it so brushed over? Main Street is extremely accessible by the looks of it. Is crime just really that casual in this universe, or do the police just suck at their jobs? Why does Chip know about Uncanny Valley? He stays in his little area of the world more than Dale does, clearly. Why didn't Dale know about it if he knew more about Crime Street? Why was Bob casually leaking Sweet Pete's plans to them while showing them around his business? And why did Sweet Pete just start trauma dumping out of nowhere? What prompted him to do that to Chip and Dale of all people? Does he rehearse this? Why did the Snake DJ only recognize them as Rescue Rangers? Does that mean that other Mickey show spin-offs and the shorts don't exist? Or are they just Chip and Dale lookalikes? Chip had a Mickey figure in his bedroom in a flashback. That means Mickey does exist? Why do the police claim that there are only 6 missing toons reported if there are so many body parts at Sweet Pete's bootlegging facility? There are 200 plus. Did they do all of those in between when Putty said 6 toons? Were 194 other toons not accounted for, or can the police just not count properly? Okay. I'm sure whoever's watching this right now has been waiting for me to address the movie's main controversies, how it affects the movie, and how it could have been avoided. And we'll start with the obvious one. Sweet Pete. For those who are unaware, Bobby Driscoll was one of Disney's first child actors to land a Disney contract back in the 1950s at the young age of 10, working closely with his animated counterpart, Peter Pan, the boy who never grew up. Eventually, Bobby did grow up, and Disney dropped him in his contract. This went on to cause him multiple problems growing up, including his child stardom-induced trauma affecting relationships, and eventually, his livelihood. He unfortunately passed away at 31 on the streets. Sweet Pete's story is awfully reminiscent of Bobby Driscoll's story, telling Chip and Dale that after he grew too old to play the part of Peter Pan, Disney dropped him, and he had to find his own way, eventually leading to him choosing to engage in illegal activity to gain a livelihood. And without Sweet Pete having a redemption within the movie, it's so easy to interpret this parallel as Disney mocking or villainizing Bobby Driscoll's story, placing the focus and blame on the victim rather than the perpetrator. Despite the parallels, I have no reason to believe it was intentional due to the numerous villain changes that the movie had so close to release, and the lack of research put into most vital parts of the movie's story anyways. But, intentional or not, it's worth noting the careless actions that made the movie harder to rewatch upon discovering. This insensitive plot could have been so easily avoided if instead of Sweet Pete as the villain, it was replaced with someone more fitting, like Fat Cat, or he was at least given a redemption, a way for the viewer to understand his point of view more and perhaps shed more light on Bobby Driscoll's suffering. Other smaller controversies include the apparently Trace Sora fan art pointed out in a tweet shortly after the film's release. Disney, you own the guy, just get one of your own assets. And the comparison to Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which I addressed slightly earlier while discussing the animation. Who Framed Roger Rabbit is an iconic and groundbreaking film which is appropriately rated for all of its brilliance. It's hard for a movie to come close to being as incredible, and though this movie was greatly inspired by its world and even hinted to have been set in the same world, there's really no comparison required. With the film having such a wide range of characters to pick and choose from, there's bound to be rejected plot points. And you can bet that there are some really interesting ones, mostly centered around who the villain of the movie should have been, before it was quickly changed to Peter Pan far into production. Pluto. Pluto was considered as the villain for this movie for a long time due to his prior connection to Chip and Dale, and he was originally going to have kidnapped Gadget rather than Monty. Having Pluto be the villain because of his pre-existing connection to the characters would have opened up a lot of interesting world building into the questions asked before, regarding their significance in the Mickey and Friends lineup. Having Gadget be kidnapped would have also given them more of a reason to include Monty and Zipper in the story, especially if they had stuck with Gadget and Zipper being the couple. According to the writers of this original concept, the CGI surgery machine and the toon's body parts would have been more integral to the plot, which would have worked so much better, considering Dale's CGI surgery serves as nothing more than an off-putting visual gag in the final movie. Charlie Brown. Charlie Brown would have been a similar situation to Sweet Pete, and was considered for a long time before they took the same story and changed it to Peter Pan instead, due to his title of The Boy Who Never Grew Up, which leads me to believe that they had no bad intentions accidentally paralleling Bobby Driscoll's story. They scrapped Charlie Brown due to the licensing costing too much, and I'm honestly so glad. If Peter Pan being Chip and Dale's villain doesn't make any sense, how much more sense would Charlie Brown have made? Pete. Mickey and Friends' Pete wasn't considered the villain as far as I know. I'm just putting him in here because when I heard the name Sweet Pete originally, I pictured this guy straight away and went, yay, that makes so much sense. Unfortunately, I was instead given Peter Pan, but alas. Pete as the villain could have been interesting in the same way Pluto was. It would have made sense given they were set in the same universe, if Mickey and Friends exist in this universe, and could have explained the lack of Mickey spin-offs as a whole, as Pete is often depicted in these spin-offs as getting along with them occasionally. Fat Cat. Also, as far as I know, Fat Cat wasn't considered a villain for this movie. Why not? You thought it would be enough to just use his head as a silly, hey look, it's the old villain reference. The thing that upsets me the most about this movie is the fact that they didn't take advantage of the already amazing and interesting villains they had in the pre-existing show that the movie claims to be a follow-up of. Fat Cat has the same big guy intimidating aura that Sweet Pete gives off. All that, with the already pre-existing connection to Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, no insensitively referenced backstory, pre-existing henchmen that people already adored, Meps, I love you, and no reason to be picked up by Disney for future projects. Maybe the main villain didn't need to grow up to not find a job. Maybe they just couldn't find a job? The directors of the film said that they loved the concepts because of how self-aware it was. You could have taken it one step further and made Fat Cat unemployed because of how progressive Disney is nowadays. They have no need for big scary villains in suits anymore when the villains in their stories are family and generational issues that are being brought up and discussed finally. Give yourself a bit of praise for raising awareness about commonly overlooked issues within society, and give old watchers a laugh as they remember Disney's progression over the years. And if that wasn't enough to convince you that Fat Cat was the perfect villain for this movie, what's better than having the main character's conflict also be the main villain's conflict? Rescue Rangers getting cancelled leaves Fat Cat unemployed too. It could make Chip and Dale's small argument have such larger effects, more impact on the phrase, it's just showbiz that Dale claims at the start. I could make an entire video on itself about why Fat Cat should have been the villain for this movie, but to be fair, they did only watch 00 Chipmunk before making this movie, so can you really blame them for forgetting about Fat Cat? I have a grudge with the episode for hinting towards Fat Cat involvement and then giving us random characters as the villains instead, so it checks out that the movie would do the exact same. The f**k cut. Avika Schaffer, one of the directors of the movie, has come forward and claimed that they have a few moments where Chip and Dale randomly say f**k out of nowhere. Obviously, these were cut from the final movie, but were mostly played into development for laughs. But that won't stop me from wanting this. Please, release this cut. I would donate my life savings just to see Chip say f**k once. It's so funny and so in character, please. You made him say hell, surely you can go one step further. What this movie was lacking was a passion for its source material. The whole point of this movie is to make an adventure enjoyable for everyone. Nostalgic to the adults, interesting to animation lovers, understandable for kids and teenagers who don't even know about the 90s series, fun for everybody to point out things they recognize, and I get it. It's not meant to be a reboot, it's meant to be a comeback. But is it? By definition, this is a reboot. They claim this is a comeback because it's a continuation of the series, but they took the series and everything people loved about it and changed it all. They stopped the series in its tracks, picked and chose what they wanted, and changed the story entirely. Does that make it inherently bad? No, not at all. It's a fun movie with a fun story, funny spins on the characters, visually it's interesting, and a lot of the gags are sure to get a laugh out of anybody in the audience. I've watched this movie multiple times outside of the purpose of viewing this in a Rescue Rangers 1989 centered light, and I've enjoyed it. I enjoy Chip's bitchy personality, his and Dale's relationship, the fun cameos. But does it compare to the series? Not at all. I won't go on for too long about everything that makes the series special to me. There's too much to list and it doesn't even involve the nostalgia factor that I unfortunately miss out on by a generation. But there's a special charm about the team dynamics, the animation, the voices and the goofy villains in the series that the movie just doesn't capture in the same way. Which is why it's so easy to distinguish the 1989 version from the 2022 version. They are not the same universe, and it makes sense. Generations come and go. What people enjoy watching changes. And here I am, an 18-year-old enjoying a TV show from 30 years ago. I've never written a movie. I've never reviewed a movie. So take my input with a grain of salt. You want people to come back for classic Chip and Dale? Keep the same voices. Alvin and the Chipmunks did 4 movies with it. Surely you can allow Chip's voice to be a few pitches higher than everybody else. You want people to enjoy the mix of 2D and 3D animation? Give the crew more to work with so that you can actually achieve that with the main characters instead of promising it and only showing it in the background of shots. You want a villain that's interesting, fun, and not at all offensive? Use Fat Cat. For God's sake, he is right there. You even went as far as to put 2 of Fat Cat's most fun henchmen in the movie as a cameo. There's your 3 replacements for Sweet Pete, Bob, and Jimmy. You want to market the movie with a big fat Rescue Rangers sticker on it for nostalgia? Focus more on the Rescue Rangers. Make the main Rescue Rangers characters actually interact. There's nothing wrong with referencing more stuff from the old series. It makes it fun and inventive, brings classic Disney back to life again. The rat disguises worked, so why not experiment more? You want everything to be the same way as it was before? Tweak? You miss the old Rescue Rangers? You love how classic and fun everything feels, don't you, Tweak? The funky voice acting, the cartoony villains and their motives. Just go watch the series. Yeah. I might go and do that. Goodbye. Thank you for watching. Apologies for the length of this video. I didn't realize how much I would have to say about this movie until I started writing down notes for it. Also, apologies for any mispronunciation or odd pronunciation in general. I like blaming it on my accent. This type of video is so fun to do, especially about something I love so much, so I might make more in the future just for my own fun. If anybody's interested in hearing me ramble about my favourite Chip and Dale adaptation, that will be next in line. Shout out to my friend Nim for making the sprites for this video, their link is in the description, and an even bigger shout out to you for watching this far. Your support means a lot. See you next time on another 40-minute essay about 2 obscure Disney characters that the general population forgets about.